Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders to help it grow. Katie, good to see you. Lance, as always, good to see you. And Mike Rossman, CEO, co-founder, Bowfly. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me back.
Love to have you. Let's, we have a ton of stuff to go through, but let's go to the polls. This is to Mike's, dear, to Mike's heart. Are you going to outsource your PPP loans? Mike, what do you do in that service?
Yeah, so we've been able to connect some of our clients with options to outsource the forgiveness processing in particular, right? So I think servicing SBA lenders understand well. I don't think they're troubled by servicing per se. I think everyone's concerned about forgiveness processing, and particularly the volume of loans that people take on. And people want to get back to originating SBA loans. So it's interesting to see the numbers there, Bob, that, you know, only a fraction of people are open to it. I'm left with this question, and maybe Lance, you could tell me about your business. I'd love to hear it. Is I know that SBA lenders are getting busier and busier on traditional 7A lending. I just don't know who wants to go ahead and file through forgiveness unless they're sitting back and waiting to see if the government throws out forgiveness altogether.
Well, and 7A activity has picked up quite a bit, back to almost a normal pace. And it would be interesting, you know, we have a pretty seasoned audience, Mike. Excuse me. If we ask this question to that big group of lenders who got involved in SBA for the first time with PPP, I think that group's going to have a higher percentage of outsourcing yeses. Our group consists of a pretty seasoned group of SBA lending institutions, and that kind of explains the response there.
No, I think that's great.
I'm sorry, Mike. I get emails from time to time. I forget there's people in a conference room who don't have access to the video screen. Joseph, bring back those numbers. Yes was, I believe, 90%. Excuse me, 9%. No is 82%. So that puts things into perspective. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, I think it's a great point, Lance. I think if you've been around SBA, if you've grown up in SBA, you know you can go ahead and certainly manage the servicing of the loan over the next 2 years as required. You can also manage the rules that come out around forgiveness processing. I think for those banks that did a lot of volume, and there's a lot of you guys out there, I think it comes down to, is that the best use of your team's time to actually go through leases to confirm they're before February 15th, to go through supporting documents of payroll? And I think we'll all agree it's not. I think there's a lot of people who are hedging and believing that the government's going to say, you know what, under 150, don't worry about it. I think there's banks, and the Times did a piece on this. There was a bank, Cross River, and Cross River did, you know, it was like 100,000 loans. Now, they're outsourcing to a group called Scratch. Now, they're outsourcing everything. They're outsourcing both the actual servicing and forgiveness processing. The groups that we're working with mostly, they are going to service themselves, but they want to get rid of forgiveness processing. We're sending them to Quattro, which is a group we've known for years. And actually, Quattro helped us in the origination process at Bowfly. We did more than 4,000 loans with various lenders, and we needed resources. And so I'd be quick to recommend Quattro.
Katie, I'm sure there's some people on the call who aren't up to speed. Where are we exactly in this legislative rulemaking process on forgiveness?
So for forgiveness, there's not really a lot of news on that. Obviously, Congress is out right now because of the holiday, but it sounds like they are working toward creating a new forgiveness application form kind of thing online that would help borrowers and walk them through the whole forgiveness process. That particular bill has not passed in the House or the Senate yet. It was just introduced last week.
And again, these bills are on a bipartisan basis. Mike, we had a nice discussion yesterday on what the media is doing with respect to PPP reporting. Chris Hearn made the comment, if it leads, it bleeds. What is your opinion about the media's take on PPP and bailing out billionaires and Kanye West and country clubs?
Oh, well, I think it's just right. You can clearly see they're having a lot of fun. So, you know, you guys have up on the screen this This is my favorite headline of all time. The backlash against PPP is why the U.S. can't have nice things. It's what my wife has screamed at my kids, why we can't have nice things in the Rosman house. The fact is the PPP program did exactly what Congress sought to do, which was to aid the economy at a great clip and enormous speed. And in order to do that, you had to go ahead and establish, you had to avoid things like mean testing. You had to avoid things like, let's look at your last 3 years' revenue. If you establish those rules, you never would have helped those businesses. But just on this point, Bob, real quick, as we look at, and this is more of, I love, again, to kind of like to hear your perspective on this and Lance's, as we look at the SB, or maybe Congress saying, let's eliminate forgiveness processing for loans under a certain threshold. I'm afraid that's going to create an unnecessary backlash against SBA saying, oh, that business that got a $100,000 loan, we didn't even want them to do the basic homework to submit in their payroll documents. We're just taking on a certification. So I worry that Congress takes these actions and then the economy and the larger market like media and the party that's not in power will use it against the SBA, and it may come home to roost in a way that we can't even envision.
Well, I certainly hope, but all I know is, in fact, I'm working on my taxes right now, and all I know is when I submit my taxes, I don't have to submit all the documentation in terms of DE4s and my car expense, and I just put it down, and I need to retain the records.
So why 150, Bob? Why not up to 10 million? Right? Well, what's the national cutoff point? Either we say it's the independent small business owner who has one, is it sole proprietor? Okay, that's a $20,000 loan. Why 100? Why 150? Why not 10? To that same logic of, hey, we don't have to go ahead and submit documents to the IRS. Okay, so why not do it across the board?
I think my initial reaction on that, and then Lance, I'll let you jump in on this. My initial reaction is the frauds that the IG has been investigating and people being arrested are for loans above $2 million. I have no issue. If you're getting a $2 million PPP loan, that means you're a sophisticated operation. You have a CPA. You have an infrastructure to be able to help you with that, as opposed to the local liquor store owner, mom and pop operation, and as you said, got the $25,000 loan.
Well, and Bob, I think about some of the PPP loans that I'm aware of, and you hit it on right on point, Bob. Small local restaurant got about $19,000. They're operating at a fraction of capacity right now. The last thing they need to do now is have to set and jumble paperwork for forgiveness. They need to continue to operate their restaurant and create revenue and profit and growth. They don't need to have to worry about gathering forms and calculating things. But I also agree with Mike to an extent. The way the media has covered this, the way the other party has covered this, they've barked a lot about, who got the loan. And quite frankly, Mike and I were talking about this before we came on. Fine. You wanted the program to come out with every I dotted and every T crossed. We wouldn't be doing PPP loans now. We'd be doing them in January. And if we did that, we'd have a 35% unemployment rate. The economy would be in a really rough spot. SBA and the Treasury, SBA and the Treasury did an amazing job of getting a program out to support employment in America and to support the ability of those Americans to spend money at businesses. I hate to imagine where we'd be if we didn't have PPP.
Let's bring Katie into this because she's been following Washington. The last couple of things that have happened in legislation have been bipartisan. Are you seeing any wavering by either side, either party, in terms of supporting PPP? I saw another headline this morning that we want to dump another $1 trillion into Main Street. Are you seeing any wavering on the Hill?
I'm not really seeing any wavering. I think the bigger problem between the parties that's kind of been an issue in the past with the last couple of bills was that they didn't like the way they were passing without everybody being in the same room. and they have since kind of fixed that issue. So that was probably the big problem. Everything else with the PPP program and with all of the subsequent bills, they've been pretty much on the same page with or able to agree on within a matter of a couple hours in most cases.
Yeah. But Mike,
Hey,
I
Bob,
love you. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, before we do this topic, I do want to add, I think the banks have done, and I think I said, I shared this the last time I was on, I think folks like Lance and SBA lenders who are in the business, and those now new SBA lenders who are new to the business, I think they did a genuinely heroic job. The amount of work that they had to do in order to originate PPP loans was extraordinary. I think if the government sees it through to say you don't have to do this additional forgiveness processing work, I think that's good for the banks. I think it allows them to go back to their business, which is helping businesses grow through extending capital. So I don't want to
grow, but to stay afloat.
And that's right. But, I think doing ticky-tack work of checking documents is not what we want our banks to do. That's why we like the idea of outsourcing that function. But if it doesn't need to be outsourced because the government's going to go ahead and eliminate the need, all the better. That's fine too.
Katie, give us the numbers real quick. What's the average size PPP loan?
I think last I heard about like 90% are under $150,000. So this is the majority of the loans are these smaller loans.
Right. Very good. Yeah, I think the 90% is closer to 350, but they're the smaller loans. Hey, we always love to ask this question. Keep our pulse on what's happening throughout the country. When are you reopening?
That's a tough question, Bob. I mean, I think most financial institutions are open, but the question is, when are they going to let customers back into the lobby?
72%. Okay. 70% say they're open now, 8% next month, 19% in the fall, and 2% 2021.
Yeah, again, Bob, I think most institutions, at least in the areas that I serve, are open, but they're not allowing customers inside the branch. They're using online banking and drive-throughs and ATMs. 100% of my contact with loan customers is via Skype, telephone, and email.
Mike, was Bowfly a PPP lender, or were you simply referring it off to another lender?
We played our consistent role of being an online marketplace, so we're not a direct lender. Our job is to do our part to efficiently connect that small business borrower to lenders. We worked with probably about a dozen lenders, Bob. A couple did really high volume, right? So they probably did 90% of our loans. But we also had an array of lenders who did 20 or 30. But we had one lender who topped over 3,000 loans themselves.
Yeah. Very good. Hey, we have a question. We always get these questions, and we sort of know the answer, but I'll throw it out to both Lance. I'll throw it out to the panel. If borrowers send in applications for forgiveness and we have not received guidance yet, which Lance and I were wrong. Lance and I both agreed we were going to have guidance by June 30th. That didn't happen. Does the time clock of the 60 days start once received, or when the SBA issued the guidance, do the 60 days start?
The regulations are pretty clear that the time clock for bank review starts at the time of receipt of the forgiveness application. That I don't think is going to change. I think the guidance we're going to get is, how does the bank submit a forgiveness application to the SBA? And the other guidance that we're going to get is whether or not there's going to be a simplified forgiveness application for smaller PPP loans. But once you receive an application from a borrower, the clock for review and decision making starts.
Of course, that could change in guidance. Mike, with the lenders that you're partnering with, what anybody accepting forgiveness or processing forgiveness? And if they are, we're going to
what we've seen is folks are trying to kick the can forward a little bit, right? Sit tight is kind of the general message that we're seeing at scale right now.
Very good. And our last question is sort of shifting gears. one of the things I'm tracking is what's going on with construction, and also I'm concerned about commercial real estate vacancies and delinquencies. That's certainly going to hit when a lot of the 6 months comes in. The question is, what has happened with your construction credit box? Tightened 65%, remained the same 35%. Not one person has expanded the credit box. Lance?
I'm not surprised by the results. I actually expected to see Titan maybe closer to 80%, so it's a good thing that more people's credit boxes remain the same for construction. I think it's certainly underwriting has changed to an extent, and there are things that you have to look at. We talked about something yesterday. You know, how do you account for the PPP loan in your debt service coverage calculations? That's an interesting question, and I think banks are having to address. Some are adding that full PPP loan payment in.
Which is going to put some businesses upside down.
Yep, absolutely. So it's I think the credit box is certainly tightened in certain industries. There's no doubt.
Mike, we love to put things into context, compare where we are today during the Great Recession. Great Recession, construction, there was no construction, there was no hotel lending, and there was a bank closing every Friday. I had lost 25% of my SBA BDOs, lost their jobs. A little bit different this time around, right, Mike?
Yeah, well, I think, again, we all look at it and say this wasn't a fundamental issue with the economy, right? This was this is a biological problem. It's a serious one, and it obviously has a reach on the economy that we're all trying to wrap our head around, particularly when you have government action shutting down the economy in a way that, certainly putting political, persuasion aside, in order to stop the spread, you have to go ahead and do the social distancing. So it's different. I'll leave with you, maybe I'll share just an optimistic view. We were talking to one of our customers who's a franchisee of Jersey Mike's. I don't think it's wrong for me to share that. And, a 5-unit individual, and their sales are up 30% year over year, right? And their cost of goods sold has improved because they're able to actually stay more to spec when the customer's not in front of them. So, I think there are businesses that are going to do well as it relates to construction. You better believe you're going to see a whole lot more of drive-through construction than you've seen. So I think there's reasons for optimism as well.
Yeah, I went to my favorite restaurant yesterday, and there were 3 people there for lunch. Go ahead, Lance.
Hey, interesting thing, Bob, and most of us probably are on Facebook. 11 years ago today, I posted about the recession saying, why is the federal government giving so much money to giant corporations that are probably going to eventually fail anyway? And then my comment, I reposted it and said, different approach this time. They gave money to the small business owners, and it seems to be working significantly better than their response last time.
This is a chart. We just want to remind everyone where we are. We decided not to ask the question. But 44, Mike, you may find this interesting. 44% of our lenders are saying, hey, we're going to adapt to the August 8th extension. I think the consensus of all of us is as long as there's money, that will be extended as well through December 31st. And obviously, we got Main Street Lending program being instituted. So these programs are not running out of money at the moment. Do you see any issues with that, Mike?
No, I don't. And I think where it gets to be a little bit more interesting is kind of a second trip through the PPP line, right, where businesses who have been under great distress succeeded in getting initial capital, but they need to go back for more. And I think that's where I'm anxious to see Congress act to say, how do we, there's a whole lot of businesses that got money who still need more help. Maybe that's where we can take a more deliberative approach. We can see what happens after a period of time, and whether it be a formal mean testing or some revenue equation that gets established, a drop, to understand who needs help and how do we get a little bit more laser focus as opposed to full on helping the entire economy at one time. I think it'll be very interesting.
Katie, you put together this nice little recap of our poll questions. Anything there stand out to you that was a shock to you?
I think the Main Street lending program, having so few people interested in it right now, and maybe this is a little bit of a plug for our webinar that's coming up, but 65% of them say they don't understand how to process these loans. And I think that's probably going to come with more guidance. There is some guidance available already, and I'm sure Lance will go in more depth with that. But I think that's probably the next step until, of course, we get P4 coming out that might make people more interested in continuing the PPP program.
Very good. Yeah, a lot of good information there. Hey, Lance, I understand we're not going to have you tomorrow, so we'll see you on Friday. What is this? Well, go back. Wrong back. There we go. What is this, Katie?
Right. This is just an act that was introduced last week, and all it's doing is creating a free online calculator for loan forgiveness for the PPP program. And this already exists on a private level, but this would create a government version of that would make it simpler for borrowers to figure out how much forgiveness they're going to get and things like that.
Great. And I saw we had a quick question. Let's go to the question real quick, and then we'll sign off. Any idea how many banks have already started processing forgiveness applications? What do you guys think? I have no idea.
I think there's some banks that are accepting applications and starting the process of looking at them on an individual level, but nobody knows how to submit those to SBA yet. So I think there might be some that are accepting applications, but the numbers are going to be real small. Every day I take a look at all the big banks to see what they're doing, and nobody has a forgiveness portal open yet.
Lance, real quick, give a plug for your webinar next week.
So what we're going to try to do is provide information about the Main Street lending program, the basic components, what things the bank are expected to do, what kind of things you need to look at from a borrower's perspective, eligibility considerations. Basically the intent, Bob, is to give you a good core knowledge of the Main Street lending program so your institution can consider whether you want to participate or not.
Very good, very good. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. You're looking well. You want to give a plug for your October event?
Sure. Yeah, and you've been there, I think, every year, Bob. So the NACLB, National Alliance of Commercial Loan Brokers, gets together annually. We're going to be in Vegas this year. And the idea is that it's an event focused to how to go ahead and improve the experience for commercial loan brokers out there, education, advocacy, and it's a very compelling event. We will have virtual aspects to it as well for those who aren't traveling yet.
I do know a number of lenders show up there, they exhibit, and they make contacts with them. Hey, Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Thanks a lot.
See you Friday.
Thanks, Bob.